Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Jesse Lynch at Jesse Lynch Realty and Realty One Group Choice out of Northeast Minneapolis. Today I'm going to do something that I guess you could call a first-time home buyer breakdown. So you want to buy a home, right? For you, it should be a simple process. It's not that simple of a process, but if you have a good real estate agent and a good team helping you along, it should be pretty seamless. Okay. Step one, it's pretty simple. You're just going to look for a real estate agent. You're going to ask around. You're going to Google it. You're going to post on social media. Hey, I'm thinking about buying a house. Does anybody know a realtor? If you're watching this, you're from the Twin Cities, I know a guy. That's all I'm saying. And once you do find somebody, you'll reach out to them. You'll say, hey, I want to buy a house. They should schedule a consultation. That's step two. You could do this with multiple agents, right? If you're like, I don't know. I'm gonna shop around. I'm going to see who I like. The reality is you're going to be spending a decent amount of time with them. You're going to be talking on the phone with them. So just make sure you like them, Make sure you enjoy talking to them. You're cool riding in a car with them or whatever. Make sure that they're down to help you get the house that you want. That's really, at the end of the day, that's what an agent should be doing. They should be working hard to get you in the house that you want to be in. So also during this meeting, there's a good chance they'll provide you with two different forms. One being an agency disclosure form, which basically just says, hey, I have these fiduciary responsibilities to you. Fiduciary, big word, weird word. I'm not going to dig too deep into what those all mean, but that is what an agent should do when they give you the agency disclosure. You'll sign that disclosure. Doesn't mean you owe them any money, but what it does say is, yes, I acknowledge that you showed me this, you explained your fiduciary responsibilities to me, and I understand them. And the second form very often will be something called an exclusive buyer's representation form. But a lot of people, myself included, like to call it a loyalty agreement. The reality is it's a formality. What it says is, if I work for you and I find you a house, then I am owed compensation. And really, you as a buyer should almost never be paying your real estate agent. Almost always, their pay will be coming from the seller. All right, step three, you're going to meet with a lender. A good agent should have a lender that they work with, that they recommend, that they have a good relationship with. And a good lender should hustle for you. A good lender shouldn't just work banking hours, in my opinion. They should work after 5 p.m. They should work weekends, because that's usually when people are looking at a house and buying a house and making an offer on a house, and you want a lender who is there for you during those times. The reason that you want to meet with a lender before you go look at any houses is because they have to provide you with something called a pre-approval letter. A pre-approval letter, more or less, is basically just something that says, my lender says that I will be able to afford this house. The seller is going to want to see some proof that you can afford it. It makes your offer a lot stronger if you have a pre-approval letter that is proof, or at least evidence that says I can afford to buy this house. And to get a pre-approval letter, they're going to need a few things. They're going to need some pay stubs for maybe the last 2 months. They're going to ask you some personal information, some financial information, social security number, that kind of thing. And then they're going to run your credit report. And basically in that meeting, they should be able to say, okay, based on all this information, I can pre-approve you for a loan of up to X dollars. So once you meet with your lender to get the pre-approval letter, you're going to sit back down with your real estate agent, and you're going to go over and you're going to create a thing called an MLS search. They should be able to draw a map or set some guidelines that say, this is where I want to look. MLS means multiple listing service, and in this video, I'm not going to go over what it is, but basically, it's just where all the houses are, where all the real estate agents, realtors, brokerages put all the houses for sale. And eventually, the stuff on the MLS gets sent out to Trulia and Zillow and that kind of stuff. But the MLS is the most up-to-date and accurate place to find houses that are for sale. Okay, and that's step 4. And to be clear, step 2, 3, and 4 can basically all happen in one day, potentially, if everything lines up correctly. Step 5 is that you're going to go search for homes. You're going to be getting emails from that MLS search. It's going to be a list of homes that kind of fall into the what you were pre-approved for, the areas you searched for, etc. And you're going to reach out to your agent. You're going to say, hey, I really like these homes. They should say, cool, let's go look at them. You'll go look at them. And that process could take a day. It could take weeks, could take months, could take a year. It depends on how many houses you go look at, depends on how serious you are, depends on how ready you are to buy, and depends on how many houses are for sale at the time. But so assume one of those houses you like and you say, hey, I could really imagine living here. I think the price is good. I'd like to live here. That brings you to step 6, which is you're going to make an offer and you're going to present it to the seller or the seller's agent, to be more precise. So for step 6, basically you're going to be sitting down with your agent, you're going to be writing up an offer or probably typing up an offer. And then you're going to decide all the terms that you want for it. There's a bunch of different contingencies. A contingency is basically you're saying, I will buy this house assuming that these other things go correctly. So in your offer, you're going to write up, you're going to say, I would like to buy this house, 123 Main Street, for $100,000, contingent upon inspection. And that basically means that I'm going to have a professional inspector go through and look at the house and find any faults with it, find any issues. Maybe they'll scope the sewer, or maybe they'll check for radon. But their job is to go through, make sure that the house is in good shape, because there's a good chance that you're not, an inspector, or you're not a home builder. And so you don't necessarily know what makes a house structurally sound, right? So that's where the inspector comes in. Typically, an inspection period will be something like 10 days, but that can change. You can do a shorter one. It might make your offer a little bit stronger. You can do a longer one if the market's not too crazy and you just want more time. Another contingency is a financing contingency, which means you say, I will buy this house contingent upon financing, which means that if you can't get financing for whatever reason, if your lender decides, oh no, never mind, we found something that we won't lend to, that you're not beholden to buy the house, because that would be pretty crazy if you were. So it's a protection basically that says, look, I really want to buy this house. I'm going to have to use financing to get it. But if my financing doesn't come through, then I won't have to buy it from you. Okay, there's other contingencies too. Those are the two, probably the biggest ones. So we're going to move on from that. And you're going to send that offer over, maybe with both those contingencies. There's a good chance with both of those contingencies. And you're going to send that offer over to the seller or the seller's agent, and that seller's agent will then present those to their seller. Their seller will respond basically in 3 potential ways. Number 1 being flat out rejection. Ouch. That isn't that common, but say you offer $50,000 on a $100,000 house, the seller might just say no. That's kind of insulting to a lot of sellers. So they might just say, no, if you want to make another offer, make a better offer, but I'm not going to entertain that at all. The second one, which is a very common response, is a counter offer. Maybe you say, I like your house, I want to buy it, but I want to pay $80,000 for it. And they wanted $100,000, and they say, how about 90, right? That counter offer comes back to you, and then basically you can either sign it or you can counter offer again. You can say 90, I don't know, how about 85? And then maybe they'll say, okay, cool, 85 works. Or maybe they'll say, look, we like your price, but we don't like the contingency that you put in place. Or maybe you said, we want a 20-day inspection period. And maybe they think, no, 20 days is too long for an inspection period. Let's make it 10, because we don't want the house sitting in limbo for 20 days waiting for an inspection. Okay, so that could also be a counteroffer. And then they would send that over, and if you say, okay, cool, 10 days is cool, then you would sign it up, and then you would have an accepted offer. And then the third one would be that you send the offer over originally, and they just accept it. That's the best news you can get when you make an offer on a house, is that they just accept it. Okay, and that brings us to step 8, which is probably the most nerve-wracking step in the whole process. That is when your offer is accepted, the sellers are cool with all the contingencies, but this is where your contingencies come into play. This is when you get the inspection, which is really common that the inspection just ends the deal because your inspector discovers there's a tree root growing through, the main sewage line, and that is going to be really expensive to fix. Or hey, the furnace doesn't work or the AC doesn't work, or some big ticket item doesn't work. I think an inspector always finds something that's maybe a little goofy or a little like substandard, but typically those aren't going to ruin a deal. But the inspector's report can also allow for some more negotiation. The financial contingency goes through another process, which I'm going to call step 9, which is appraisal and underwriting. If the inspection contingency isn't the most nerve-wracking, then for sure the appraisal and the underwriting is. The underwriting process is where, with the most scrutiny, they're looking at your finances, they're seeing if there's anything goofy about, how you've paid your bills in the past. A lot of times they can get through that stuff. They can work through it if your credit is strong enough, or your employment is good enough, or you can just explain, oh, this is what that weird thing was. But then the other side of that coin is appraisal. An appraiser is somebody from the lender or the bank who goes and looks at the house. They're going to use different methods to determine the value of the house that you're trying to buy. They will look at the condition of it, they will check comparables, they'll look at the neighborhood, and they will basically determine if the house is worth what you're trying to pay for it. And the reason for that is the bank doesn't want to lend $80,000 on a house that's worth $50,000. Right? But the appraiser will come back and they'll tell the bank, and then you're through the financial contingency, and then you're on to step 11, which is 2 things. Title work. Title work all basically happens in the background, and more or less it's just a title company makes sure that the person selling the house is the person that owns the house. And then the insurance, that's kind of a 2-part thing. That's basically, there's a thing called title insurance where you're finding a title insurance company who will say, yeah, look, we think that who's trying to sell the house owns the house, but in the event that they don't, we will cover that issue. And then kind of the other part of that is that you are finding insurance for the house so that when you buy it, it is insured. Kind of like when you buy a car, you need to have insurance for the car when you drive off the lot. And the final step, step 11, should be a very happy day. It is the final walkthrough and the closing. The final walkthrough should just be you and your agent. You go to the house and you make sure everything looks like it did when you tried to buy it. You make sure that they didn't take the refrigerator or the stove that they said they were going to include. You make sure that they didn't put a bunch of holes in the wall that weren't there. Make sure they didn't paint it pink, etc. And then closing. Closing should be you and your agent. You go meet with the seller and the seller's agent, and you sign all the documents, and they transfer the title over to your name. And just like that, you own the house, and now all you have to do is move in, which I suppose would be the 12th step. But if you hire me, I'll help you move. How about that? This was a long video, but I really, really hope that it's educational and you feel more comfortable with the idea if you're about to buy a house or thinking about buying a house. If you have any questions for me, reach out. I'd love to hear from you. If I missed anything, let me know. Follow me on social media. I am Jesse Lynch and Jesse Lynch Realty on Instagram. Follow me on Facebook. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. I appreciate you all watching this. Love you. Bye-bye.